Right, so as a review for this test, let's review. There are a couple of different types of verbs that we've learned, right? We've learned regular AR verbs. We've learned car, gar, and zar verbs. Those are regular, right? They're only not regular in the yo form, right? And they fall under this chart right here. Aste, o, amos, aron. Then we've learned ER and IR verbs, which will include the stem changers and the I to Y. But I can also have regular ER verbs like comprender. It's a regular verb. In the preterite, it wouldn't do anything weird, and it's going to follow this chart. Iste, yo, imos, and ieron, right? We also learned, right after that, we learned about ir, ser, dar, and ver. So ir and ser share fui, fuiste, fue, fuimos, fueron. And don't forget, this is FUI, this is FUI, this is FUE, this is FUE. I remember that I go in the top box and everyone else goes in the bottom left box. And dar and ver have very similar charts. They just start with the letter that the verb starts with. So diste, dio, instead of viste, vio, depending on which verb you're talking about there. So there's a review of those verbs. Now, we're about to talk about stem changers and I to Y verbs, and they are going to still follow this ER-IR verb chart, okay? So, all right, so first let's talk about double vowel verbs. So again, they're going to follow this same ER-IR verb chart, okay? And it's a double vowel verb. For example, leer has two vowels next to each other that includes the ending of the verb. So this is an ER double vowel verb. Part of the ending is part of a double vowel pair. Does that make sense? So this would be considered a double vowel verb. Now, regatear is not a double vowel verb because it's an AR verb. It has to be an ER-IR verb because these guys right here are our troublemaker, and they are only on the ER-IR verb chart. Right here I've only got one vowel at the beginning, which is totally fine. So this is a great example of a double vowel verb. So once I have discovered that it's a double vowel verb, again, don't forget this little thing that we put on the board. All these little things that you should do when you get your test or your quiz is go through and kind of label everything. Underline your double vowel verbs. That's how they stick out to me. So I've underlined my double vowel verb. First thing I do to conjugate it, I remove the ER ending. So if it were leer, I would remove the lay, and then I would add the endings from the ER-IR verb chart. So lei, leiste, leo. I would do it exactly the way it is on this chart. Okay, and follow the steps. Third step, in the bottom left or bottom right box, and of course that's the LA usted or the EOS ES ustedes boxes, I'm going to change I to Y, only in those boxes. There, okay? Last thing, if it's a UIR verb, and an example of that would be destruir, then I'm done, okay? If it is an ER double vowel verb, like leer is, then I have to go to all my leftover I's and change them into accented I's, okay? So that's an example of how to conjugate a double vowel ER verb. And really quickly, I will do the verb destruir so you can see the difference between the two. Okay, so again, I've got accents on almost every single conjugation here in leer because I had to go back and add it there and there since it's an ER double vowel verb. But destruir is a UIR, so I'm going to stop after step 4. So step 1 was I took off the IR and it was destru, destru, destru. Then I added the iste, io, and then I changed I to Y. So I still get that accent at the end because it was on the original chart. There it is. Then I did I to Y right there and right there. And then I'm done. because it's a UIR verb. So I'm not going to go add accents back to those two right there. Okay? So those are ER verbs, or excuse me, those are double vowel verbs. Now let's talk about stem changers. All right. So for stem changing verbs, they're also following the ER-IR verb chart, which is iste, io, imos, ieron. And again, to review, my stem changers have to be an IR verb, which is why when you're looking at this bad boy right here, I'm going to put a box around the IR verbs. Okay? So I've boxed my IR verb because it has to be an IR verb, and if it's an IR verb, did it stem change in the present tense? If so, then it's a stem changer. I've only got two types of stem changers in the preterite. I've got O to U and E to I. Stem changing verbs are easier to conjugate than double vowel verbs because there's really only these three steps to do. So first thing I'm going to do is remove the IR ending. For example, with the verb dormir, I'm taking off the IR. And then I'm going to add in the ER-IR verb chart ending. So it would be dormí, dormiste, dormió. Still put the accents wherever they are on that box so that they fall where they're supposed to when you're done. Dormimos, that's an S, and dormieron, right? So that is step 2. Add the ER-IR chart endings. Step 3, and this is the important part because all I've done so far is conjugated a verb. It's a stem changer though. I've got to go back and change the stem. So only in the bottom left and bottom right boxes do I do the stem change. So this box and this box, I would stem change, and clearly out of the two categories, it's the O that I'm changing to a U. So it would be durmió and durmieron. Okay? So that is the stem changing verbs. Again, they only change in the bottom left and bottom right box. So the stem changers and the double vowel verbs only change in the bottom left and bottom right box, and that's what they have in common. They also have in common that they're both using this iste, io, imos, ieron box. All right? Now let's move on to the irregular preterite. All right, so now we're going to talk about the irregular preterite, which y'all should be basically experts at this point. Here's the chart, iste, o, imos, ieron. I went ahead and did these two boxes in red because these two really come off of the AR verb chart, as you can see, minus the accents, of course. And the rest of them come off of the ER-IR verb chart, iste, imos, and ieron, also without accents. Never had them anyway in those boxes. So this is like the Brady Bunch box of verb chart. All right. Little note here. The verb hacer is hizo with a Z in this box because if I had spelled it the way that I wanted to with a C, C followed by O is hard and it would be ico, which is wrong. So right here in this box only, I'm going to put a Z for hacer. All the J stem verbs, which are basically all the verbs that end in CIR and the verb traer, they're going to end in J-E-R-O-N in this box. They're called J stems because at the end of their stem they have a J. In this box it's going to be heron instead of hieron. So this was originally the verb tener. It's going to be tuv. This was hacer. It's is. This was querer. It's quis. This was venir. It's vin. This was poder. It's pud. This was poner. It's pus. Andar. Y'all, I don't even care about andar. True story. It's anduv. Saber is soup. Tener, traer, I do that every time. Is trach. Estar is estuv. And decir is dich. Got it? And all I have to do is attach whatever ending goes with those to make it what it is. So, tuve, hiciste, quiso, vinieron, whatever I want to do to make those verbs into the people doing them. Does that make sense to everybody? Last bit, the only reason I added ir, ser, dar, and ver to the bottom here is that they have in common with this chart that none of these have accents, right? So if I'm looking at my ir, ser, dar, and ver charts that are right here, none of these have accents. and none of these have accents, okay? So your irregular verbs and your ir, ser, and dar, and ver verbs do not have accents. All the other kind do have accents.